Our interview this morning is with Ray Gauer. Ray was born in Crawford, Texas in February of 1932. He served in the United States Navy from November of 1955 until September of 1957. His highest rank attained was gunner's mate, E3. This interview was conducted at Corsicana, Texas on Friday, March the 23rd, 2012. My name is Dale Dexheimer. I'm not related to Ray in any way. Also in the room is Milton Gibson, who is our videographer, who is not related to Ray, and Miss Gower is here. This interview is conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress and for Operation Remember, City of Burleson, Texas. And with that intro, Ray, you can tell us about your time in the U.S. Navy, sir.
Okay. Well, to start with, I now reside in Waco, Texas, with my wife, Charlene. We've been married 52 years. We have one son and one daughter. Son, David, and daughter, Valerie. My son served in the Navy in the middle 90s on board a missile destroyer, so I'm proud of that. To continue, I was in the area of the draft. Some guys and myself were discussing the day before possibly joining the Air Force in the next week. And lo and behold, when I got home that day, there was a greetings to that I'd been drafted from your friends and neighbors. And from there, I don't remember how many days it was before we caught the bus out of Waco to Dallas, and this is where the surprise took place. We were all in a room, we took the oath and also all of a sudden, a chief petty officer walked in, said, "The following men will rise and follow me." And as near as I remember, my name was first. And we all looked at each other, kind of puzzled. We didn't know what was going on. So when we got in the next room, he had us all lined up and said, "Boys, welcome to the U.S. Navy." So we all had surprised looks on our faces. But in the long run, it was a good surprise. I enjoyed my tour in the Navy, even though it was short, being drafted. And there was quite a few that was drafted in that era to join the Navy. From then, we caught a plane out of Dallas. After a good meal, we caught a plane to San Diego. And that's when the climate changed. The man wasn't as friendly, as nice as they were in Dallas. They shouted commands, and we got there about midnight, and we were issued some clothing and so forth to rest, and we got to bed about 1 o'clock and got up about 3 o'clock. The next day we got our haircuts. And needless to say, we looked like a bunch of shaven so-and-sos. And everyone was disappointed about the haircut deal. But anyway, that's part of life. And then we were issued clothing. We were given, I don't know how many shots. They were standing on both sides and give you a shot in one arm, shot in the next arm. And that's back when they used those big square needles, like they called them. They were a lot bigger than the little needles they use today to give you a shot. And after that, we were issued clothing, and then we were shown to our barracks. And this all took place in Naval Training Center in San Diego, which was nice. I felt sorry for the boys that winter that had to go to Great Lakes. Our son went to Great Lakes, and it wasn't funny. He said below zero temperature, and your face would freeze before you knew it. But anyway, we had a good boot camp. We had a chief gunner's mate. By the way, he looked like Frank Sinatra, and he was good to us. He was like a father. Although when you got out of line, he would let you know that you got out of line. And when we were marching, anybody that didn't march right, there was a company, kind of, I forget the name of it, but it's like a bunch of goof-offs. He said, if you don't straighten up and march right, you will be in that company. And then you will do more than 12 weeks of basic training. But anyway, after we did get to come home for Christmas, that was halfway through boot camp, and that's something that most of them didn't get to do. And then when we returned to finish boot camp, we caught a train to San Francisco. Actually, it was Oakland, and spend the night. The next day, there was a vehicle waiting for us to take us to Vallejo to catch our ship, which was in dry dock, the USS Sumner County LST 1148. And I can tell you, it didn't look like a ship. I wondered what we were going aboard. All the scaffolding, paint being stripped and repainted. The superstructure had scaffolding all around it. It was in for a complete overhaul. And needless to say, it was dirty and dust and sand everywhere. I wound up in the deck force for about 6 weeks until a couple of boys from North Carolina, they were twins, they were gunner's mates at the time, befriended me and got me into gunnery, which I really appreciated that. I enjoyed being in gunnery. The maintaining of the mounts, 40mm mounts, was just like working on an old John Deere tractor. The hydraulic system was almost identical, so it just fell right in place for me. So that was a joy to get into gunnery. After the ship got out of dry dock, San Diego being the home port, we were leaving Vallejo, coming under through the Golden Gate Bridge, and I didn't know, but was told before that the swells get pretty high coming inland around Golden Gate. And as I didn't know better, I ate a Snickers bar before I took my watch on the conning tower. As I can say, I lost my Snicker bar. But the good part about that, that was the only time that I ever got seasick. And we made to San Diego, and from there on we did maneuvers, operations off of Long Beach, and in and out of port. And before we went overseas, as near as I remember, July or August of 1956. Stopped in Hawaii for 3 days, which was nice. A lot of the guys and myself, we rented a vehicle to tour the island of Oahu and got to see things that old country boys never got to see before. And then we got to Japan. We steered into Tokyo Bay at Yokosuka, which was home port overseas. And from there we did exercises. The first thing I remember is we rode out a typhoon in Tokyo Bay. My first experience with a typhoon also. The wind, I can't remember how fast it was going, but it was coming from one direction, and then all of a sudden the captain came on the PA system and said, "Boys, we can all go above board now for a little relaxation and a little sunshine." It lasted about an hour. Then the wind changed directions. We were in the eye of the storm. The wind changed directions from the other way, and it really blew the ship back. About every hour we had to hoist anchor, steam forward, and drop anchor. It moved the ship. The anchor wouldn't hold the ship. And then we did some maneuvers off of Okinawa. And I'll still remember this day, they said, "Don't swim in the water here because the snakes are poison." So I stayed out of the water. And then we steamed back to Japan. And the next time we went to Okinawa, a hurricane blew in, and all ships steamed west. And the waves were so high on our ship that it went over the main deck, split a main seam that you could drive an automobile through it. The cherry picker went over the side, and it's still, I guess, at the bottom of the ocean in that area. So we made it back. We had some that weathered it, the ones that had been through hurricanes before, and others that it was their first time. It was kind of scary. We had a cook that he was a little rambunctious. He used words I never heard before. But when we got into the hurricane, he had one life jacket on, one under his arm, and was carrying a Bible in his other arm, and he could quote more scripture than a preacher could. And as soon as the typhoon was over, he was just like he was, no change. But anyway, we went into repairs in Sasebo. The conning tower broke over, and we were in dry dock for, I imagine, 6 to 8 weeks to get all those things repaired. And to see the people over there work on those things is something else, the way they build these scaffolding, it looked like out of bamboo poles and so forth. So that was an experience also. We steamed into the Philippines later that year, and we had what you call Operation Beacon Hill, which was a peacetime mock war off of the east coast of the Philippines, and there were 72 ships in that. LSTs did their beach landing. The destroyers and the cruisers fired shells overhead. The aircraft carriers were furthest out. The planes would come and like strafe the beaches and things, and it was just a real, like a mock war. The Marines went ashore. They were mad at us because we always stole their sea rations. So they brought us some coconuts back, and they didn't tell us the coconuts were green yet and told us to drink the milk. It was real good for you. So anyway, I think everybody knows the rest of the story on that. And they got their kicks back. So anyway, I still remember the carrier, I think it was the Shangri-La, they were unloading the Bearcats, and it was a sight to see all those planes. We went back to, after this was over, also before we go on, we took a trip to Manila, and I was riding on a bus sitting beside a Filipino man. He was reading a book, and all of a sudden he reached in his pocket of his coat, got out an egg. I said, well, I thought, maybe he'll be eating a boiled egg. But he took his thumb, cracked all around it, and opened it up with one hand, just like some people, chefs can do an egg. They can open it up, drop it in a skillet. He opened it up, and when he put it up to his mouth, the little chick's head hung out, and it almost got me. But anyway, I was introduced to ballots at the time. And we went to Manila, and it was hot that day. And it was the day the president, I don't remember whether he died or got killed or something, but most of the businesses were closed, so we didn't get to see too much. And we came back, and then we steamed back to Japan. That being said, we were told we would work longer hours to get the ship in shape to go to the Suez Canal. You didn't get all the news back then like you do now. But then we realized this was the Suez crisis. Ships were sunk in the canal and blocked the passageways. And our LST Division 57 consisted of 7 LSTs, some destroyers, some cruisers, and a carrier or two was assigned to go over there to assist. Of course, needless to say, the carriers, the cruisers, and the destroyers were already over there, and we were about halfway there. We got word that this had been settled. and we turned around and came back. And needless to say, the Marines let out such a yell or holler, they could hear it halfway around the world. They were happy at the time because they didn't know what to expect. They probably, like we were, they weren't in war before, and here they had thought there was going to be war staring them right in the face. But anyway, we got back to Japan. The Marines got off the ship, unloaded all the vehicles, and that's all there is to that. After that, we came back to the United States. The fanfare back then wasn't too much. We probably had 15 or 20 people meet the ship at the dock to greet us coming home. But at that time, parents didn't get to travel to see their sons come home like they do today. And after we were back, our ship was assigned to go back to Hawaii, and I wanted to stay aboard it at the time, but they said due to just being 2 months left on my tour duty, that wasn't feasible to take me over there and then fly me back. So I stayed in the holding center, whatever you call it, for 2 months, and that was the longest 2 months I ever spent in my life. Incidentally, the ship took part in the movie South Pacific. And if you ever see the movie South Pacific, there is an LST out in the distance. It wasn't really any close-ups. Some of the sailors got to sit on benches and clapped when the lady sang and so forth, and they said it wasn't any really big deal like they built it up to be. But anyway, our ship was in the movies. So anyway, after that, the 2 months was up. I did get my discharge, came back to Crawford, and started to do farming again like I did, and I thought it wasn't too feasible, so I went to Waco and found a job, and the guy wanted me to go to work immediately. Well, I couldn't do it that day, so we started the next day. And worked there for a while and got laid off. I went to work for a man that was in the saw and tooling business. And after about 18 years, a tragic accident happened. He got killed, and the business went downhill and finally bankrupt into receivership. And we started our own business, Century Saw and Tool. And we had it for 23 years. And two boys bought it from us that lived there in Waco, and they've had it 15 years now, so the business has got quite a few years on it. And I retired in 1997 and have been attending these LST meetings in my ship's reunion every other year in Gallatin, Tennessee, which is Sumner County, and then we have the Texas chapter LST, which is semi-annually. So this is about the story of my life so far. I am a lucky person. I had a kidney transplant and when I was 75, and that is a cutoff date for transplants. So I've had a good life so far and still here at 80 years old. And this is about all I have to say. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, sir.
I didn't deviate too much, did I?
No, we've got a little time to do here. You grew up on a farm, I guess, Ray?
Yes.
The reason I say that you referred when you got to that 40 millimeter mount, the hydraulics were like you had on that John Deere.
Right.
So Dad had a couple old John Deeres?
Oh, yes.
One lungers?
Sir?
One cylinder?
Two cylinder.
Two cylinder.
Yeah.
Okay.
They call them Poppin' Johnnies.
Yep. Well, the Poppin' Johnny was, I think, a one cylinder.
Was
the
it?
first ones that
Okay.
Deere made.
Well, ours was a two cylinder.
You were talking John Deere A's and B's, I guess.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
You're familiar with them too, then, I guess.
I've spent a little time on them. How'd you ever get? You went to boot camp, and you appear to have withstood this pretty well. It was grew up and learned discipline, etc. So
Sure.
there was no shock of discipline when you went to San Diego.
No, boot camp was simple to me in more ways than one. PT, or physical training, was really a snap coming from the farm because you were always in good shape. I felt sorry for some of the boys that didn't have that ability. They had to stay later and finish up their physical training and things like that. But to me, it was easy.
Let me back up just a second. When you went up to Dallas,
Yes.
Chief comes in, you're going with me.
Yeah.
I guess you went out to Love Field and got on this airplane. DFW was not there, so it would have been Love Field.
No, there was another airport between Dallas and Fort Worth at the time, and I can't think
Oh,
of the name
Greater
of it.
Southwest, I guess, was there.
Could have been. But anyway,
Had you ever been on an airplane before, Ray?
no, I haven't. It was on a four-cylinder prop-driven plane, a four-motor prop-driven plane, and I don't remember what the call letters would have been.
But it was a new experience for the
Oh,
farm
yes.
boy from Crawford.
Right.
You mentioned when you got to San Diego, that first day, you got the big square needles, you got the haircut.
Right.
You would have gone in, you went in 55.
55.
Was your hair a little long when you got to San Diego?
No, mine was just normal. So
Oh, okay.
there was some around that had 50s model hairdos.
Yes, sir. That's where I was going. Yours was not that way, but there were
No.
some that were ducktails and what have
No,
you.
I had no ducktails.
Okay. How'd you ever get to amphibs? Did you have any input in your going to an LST, or when you got out of basic, did you have some? When you got a boot camp, did you have some form, or did you have a dream sheet, or anything that you filled out?
We filled out a deal that pertained to the knowledge we had of certain things, and I remember filling a sheet out on that. And I assume, of course there was a lot of LSTs in the 50s, and they needed a lot of sailors to fill those. And yeah, we were hoping for a carrier, but everybody hopes for a carrier or a cruiser. But after we got aboard the LST, and then we saw how the people had to live on a cruiser, everything come above deck had to be in your dress uniform and stuff. That we could use our dungarees and go anywhere except the shore. It was more relaxed.
You got to Japan. You spent some time in Tokyo Bay. You were in Japan in 1956.
6 and 7.
10 years after the war, World War II. Did you see any effects of the war, Ray? Were there still effects from World War II?
Yeah, we took, I forgot to put this in, but we took a tour to Tokyo, and you can still see some of the ruins around where the Emperor's Castle was and places like that. The lady that took us on a tour was Japanese, and she told our group getting whipped by the USA was the best thing that ever happened to Japan. And that was something to hear out of their mouth. But they were eager to get out from under the rule of the Emperor.
Okay. So you didn't find anti-American sentiment?
Oh no, we're welcome.
Okay. Did you spend much time on the beach in Japan?
Not a whole lot. When you in back then, you made more money than you did at home on the farm probably, so I tried to save all I could and take all the pictures I could. I took a total of about 1,600 slides
Wow.
and things, so
35
that's what I spent most of my money on.
35 millimeter slides.
Yes, and also my son put them on an SD disc for me too now, so you can show it on the TV instead of use that big old screen.
Uh, you said that I think you went down to Okinawa where you did maneuvers.
Right.
You used the word maneuvers a number of times.
Exercise, what I should have said.
Exercise? Oh,
Yeah, that's
well,
what I should have said.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
That would include putting Marines on the beach. What did you do on these maneuvers, Ray?
Well, we would back off and let the ducks out the bow door and the other amphibian vehicles loaded with Marines,
Okay.
and just go through a mock war, a mock landing.
Did you always have Marines on board?
No, just
No.
on exercises.
You didn't have a particular group of Marines, a company or a battalion or whatever assigned
no.
to LST 1148?
No,
Okay.
we were just transporting them and amphibians when we went on the way to the Suez Canal at the time.
Did you run up on the beach, open the doors?
Oh yeah, we
down
did
with
that
the ramp?
before too. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's when we put the captain to the test.
Did he pass?
Oh yeah, our captain, he was real quiet, reserved, and I should have put that in, I guess. But anyway, it's gone.
Your captain would have been a lieutenant commander.
Lieutenant, he made lieutenant commander about the time I got off, and he got off at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Having had just the little experience at trying to handle an LST, I came from the destroyer Navy to an LST, and the first time the old man said, "You take her alongside the pier," it was quite an experience.
Oh, you were commissioned, huh?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I was JG. But I wasn't used to all that freeboard, and the wind got a hold of us, and it was.
Yeah, I was fixing to say the wind plays a big factor in bringing an LST alongside a dock.
Yes, sir, it does.
And
Those skippers they're pretty sharp guys.
yeah,
I got a real appreciation of our skipper after I tried it.
as John Wayne said in that one movie when they were shooting, he always said, "Remember windage and elevation." Remember that saying? When you're shooting.
You mentioned in the Philippines you were in a big exercise.
Yes,
Shells overhead,
right.
airplanes.
Airplanes flying. Of course, they weren't dropping any bombs. They were just coming down like they were strafing the beach or something.
The
Yeah,
first
those Marines saying some of them get pretty close to those trees, said they were knocking the leaves off of the palm trees.
The first time we put Marines, I was Vietnam era.
Uh-huh.
The first time we put Marines on the beach down in the Delta, to me that was just like a John Wayne movie.
Yeah,
The palm trees flew in the air, airplanes came over, dropped bombs,
yeah.
cruisers way out there somewhere. But when you were telling your story, I thought of the very same thing. It was like a John Wayne movie.
Yeah.
Comes time to get off. You spent 2 months.
I think it was called Naval Receiving Station or something like that.
In San Francisco,
Well,
San Diego.
No, it was in San Diego.
In San Diego.
In other words, where they put you up, you didn't really do anything. I didn't have any duty or anything. Just get up and eat breakfast, go back to your bunk, and shine your shoes or do whatever. And then of an afternoon, you could go on leave. But that time just stood still.
You said it was the 2 longest months, and that was going to be my question.
Yeah.
What made this the longest months you ever
Yeah,
spent?
it just, I guess, being the doldrums, just
Okay.
nothing to do like aboard the ship. You stay busy.
As a gunner's mate, you had, what sort of armament did you have on that LST?
LST, the main batteries was 40 millimeter mounts, and then we had some 20s. The forward, as you know, was twins, and then they had port and starboard single, and then a twin on the stern, and two, I think it was 2 single. Some of the LSTs, and ours did to start with, had them 2 40 millimeter single barrels on the main deck, and then 2 elevated, and then the dual, or the 2 barrel one, was right on the bow. where the fire control technician was.
Did you fire often, Ray?
Yeah, we did some firing, quite a bit. It's amazing today what you don't need anybody to fire a cannon. Back then, near as I remember, it was 7 people, I believe, to maintain a turret.
You fire it at
Sleeve or drone. Or
okay. So this was anti-aircraft fire, generally.
something. Yeah.
Okay. When you got out, you worked for another company which you eventually became an owner yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Ever use that Navy training? Any training that you got in the Navy in your life after you got out?
Mm. Well, the one thing was discipline that make a difference. To see some of the things some would do to goof off and try to kill time versus making productive time.
Mm-hmm.
It just
So
didn't sit well with me.
The discipline between the farm and the discipline of the military, it did help you as you went through your business.
Of course, on the farm, you had to discipline yourself. Of course, in the military, you didn't have to. They did it for you.
Ask you one more question here, Ray. Century tool or Century saw and tool.
Right.
What do you sell? What do you service?
Well, we service and sold carbide tip saw blades,
Okay.
cutter heads for molding, stick and cope cutters for the cabinet doors, any architectural millwork, and things like that. We also sold and welded bandsaw blades,
Okay.
sharpened big knives, long knives.
Okay.
It was an interesting job, interesting trade.
Okay. Well, I just wondered when I heard the name. We certainly appreciate the time, you taking the time this morning, Ray, to come
Well,
do the interview with us. Appreciate your time in the service, taking care of us then too, sir.
well, you know, as we look back, it's all you could do. Back then, you served, you didn't get any rewards when you got out like the young boys do now. I think the only thing I could have gotten at the time was getting a cheaper rate of interest in buying some land or something like that. You get a little cheaper interest.
But you never used
But
any
now,
of those.
now if the boys nowadays put their mind to it and play the cards right, they can come out with a pretty good hunk of money and college education and everything else, which should be a good incentive.
Well, and they deserve it too.
Oh, yeah.
You bet.
Anybody deserves what they can get for serving the country, but I'm just talking the difference. The men that served World War II, at the time, they did it because there was an urgency, there was a need for it.
Mm-hmm. Well, good. Thank you, sir.
Okay, that's it?
Yep, we're done.